Felt responsible, sensible, necessary. At 79, you don't wake up with many illusions left. The house is quiet in a way that feels permanent. I move slower now. I sit longer. I think more than I speak. And most of what I think about is time. Not the time I have left, but the time I traded away without knowing what it was worth. I'm not telling you this because I want sympathy. At my age, you understand that sympathy doesn't change anything. I'm speaking because there are things I didn't understand when I was younger, and they cost me something I can't get back. When I was in my 20s, I was afraid of being poor. I don't mean uncomfortable, I mean unstable. My father lost his job twice when I was a boy. I remember the way my mother folded bills at the kitchen table, as if folding them neatly would somehow stretch them. I remember the tightness in the house, not anger, just worry. I told myself I would never live like that. So when I got my first steady job at 23, I held on to it like a life raft. It wasn't glamorous, long hours, predictable work, a desk near a window that didn't open, but it was stable. The pay came on time. The benefits were decent. I felt safe. I met my wife when I was 27. She had an easy laugh. She liked small things, morning walks, late dinners, music playing softly while she cooked. I loved that about her, though I didn't understand it. I thought those were decorations around life. The real life was work, building something solid. We married when I was 29. I told her more than once, just give me 10 years, I'll get us secure, then we can relax. 10 years felt temporary, like holding your breath underwater. The first child came when I was 32. I remember standing in the hospital hallway, calling my supervisor to tell him I'd be back by Monday. My wife later told me I didn't have to do that, but I didn't see it that way. I thought showing dedication was how you protect a family. In my 30s, my days were structured. Wake at 6, commute, work, commute back, dinner, a bit of paperwork at the kitchen table, then sleep. On weekends, I often caught up on projects. There was always something that could be done to get ahead. Another certification, another investment plan, another conversation with a manager about advancement. I told myself it was temporary. My wife would sit on the porch some evenings, watching the sky change colors. She would call me to come sit with her. Sometimes I did. Often I said, in a minute. The minute usually stretched into an hour. Then it was dark. She stopped asking as much after a while. In my 40s, the promotions started coming. Not spectacular ones, just steady progress. A larger office, a slightly higher salary, a growing retirement account. I tracked the numbers carefully. I liked seeing them increase. It meant we were safe. That word again, safe. We bought a bigger house. The children had their own rooms. There was a small backyard. I told myself I was giving them stability I never had. But stability has a way of demanding attention. The bigger house meant higher payments. Higher payments meant more pressure. I began staying later at work, volunteering for extra responsibility, accepting travel I didn't really want. I missed a school play once. My daughter was 9. She had 2 lines. I remember she practiced them at the dinner table for a week. I promised I would be there. That afternoon, a meeting ran long. A client was upset. My supervisor asked me to stay and help smooth things over. I thought about leaving anyway. I even stood up once. But I sat back down. I told myself there would be other plays. When I got home, the house was quiet. My wife was in the kitchen. She didn't yell. She didn't accuse. She just said, "She kept looking for you." That sentence has stayed with me longer than any compliment I ever received at work. Still, I didn't change. It wasn't that I didn't care. I cared deeply. That was the problem. I cared about preventing every possible future disaster. I cared about insurance policies, college funds, retirement projections. I thought love meant eliminating risk. In my 50s, the children grew independent. They needed me less in practical ways. I told myself that proved I had done it right. My wife grew quieter, not bitter, just quieter. She filled her days with friends, volunteer work, gardening. She stopped waiting for me to join her. We were polite, we functioned well, we rarely fought, but something soft between us had thinned. One night when I was 56, she said, "When do we get to enjoy what you've built?" I answered automatically. "Soon. Just a few more years. I'm close to another raise." She nodded, but she looked tired. At 60, I finally felt what I had been chasing all along, financial security. The mortgage was nearly paid off. The retirement accounts were strong. The children were settled in their own lives. I expected relief. Instead, I felt restless. Work had been my structure for decades. Without the constant climb, I didn't know where to put my energy. I thought maybe I just needed one more achievement, one more milestone. So I stayed. My wife's health began to change when I was 63. Nothing dramatic at first, just fatigue, a cough that lingered, appointments that became more frequent. I attended some of them, not all. There was always a reason, a quarterly report, a new initiative, a problem that only I seemed able to fix. One afternoon I was at my desk when my phone rang. It was her. She said the doctor wanted to run more tests. Her voice was steady, but I heard something under it. I told her I would leave early. I didn't. I finished what I was doing first. I told myself I would be more useful if I wrapped things up properly. By the time I arrived at the clinic, she was sitting alone in the waiting area. She smiled when she saw me. That was her way. She didn't make scenes. The diagnosis came slowly, over months. Treatment schedules, adjustments, quiet fear. I cut back my hours, but not as much as I could have. I still believed that maintaining our financial stability was part of caring for her. I thought I was being strong. In truth, I didn't know how to sit still with uncertainty. Work gave me numbers and plans. Illness did not. The last year of her life, I was 68. I remember the sound of the oxygen machine at night. I remember the way she looked at me sometimes, as if measuring something. Not my income, not my accomplishments, just me. One evening, she said very softly, "I wanted more of you." Not angrily, just honestly. I didn't have a defense. For the first time, I didn't try to explain. I held her hand. It felt smaller than I remembered. When she died, the house did not feel secure. It felt hollow. All the numbers I had tracked so carefully meant nothing in those first months. The retirement accounts were intact. The bills were paid. The investments were stable. But the porch was empty. I retired at 70. People congratulated me. They said I had earned it. I smiled and nodded. I didn't tell them that the thing I'd been protecting all my life was already gone. The children visit when they can. They have their own routines now, their own responsibilities. I don't blame them. I taught them that work comes first. They learned the lesson well. Sometimes I sit in the backyard in the evenings. The sky still changes colors, the way it used to when my wife called me outside. I try to remember the exact sound of her laugh. It fades a little more each year. What I lost wasn't dramatic. There was no single explosion, no scandal, no collapse. It was a slow trade. An hour here, a conversation there, a promise postponed, a presence deferred. I always believed I was buying peace by securing the future, but peace doesn't live in the future. It lives in the small, ordinary moments you either enter fully or you miss. I missed many of them. Security is not a bad thing. I'm not foolish enough to say that. Being able to pay your bills matters. Feeding your family matters, but I confused security with control. I thought if I worked hard enough, planned carefully enough, I could prevent loss. I could not. At 79, I understand that loss is not something you schedule. It arrives whether your accounts are balanced or not. What is permanently lost for me is not just my wife. It is the version of myself who might have sat beside her more often. The father who might have left a meeting to watch a school play. The husband who might have said, "This can wait." Time does not refund itself. I sometimes open old photo albums. In many of the pictures I am absent. I was the one holding the camera, or I was at work. At the time, that seemed unimportant. Now it feels symbolic. I am less remembered than I expected to be. That is a quiet realization. If you are younger and listening to this, I'm not here to tell you to quit your job or ignore responsibility. I know how complicated life is. I know the fear that sits in your chest when you think about instability. I only wish I had understood that peace is not something you earn at the end of a long race. It is something you either allow into your daily life or you postpone indefinitely. I kept postponing it. I told myself, just a few more years. I said that in my 30s, my 40s, my 50s. There are no extra years stored somewhere for later use. Now my days are simple. I wake up early, I make coffee, I sit in the same chair by the window. The house is paid for, the accounts are stable, the world is quiet around me. I have security. I do not always have peace. Sometimes they visit together. When my granddaughter sits beside me and asks about the past. When the light in the evening falls just right. In those moments, I feel something close to what I was chasing all along. But they are moments, not a life. I don't hate the man I was. He was trying to protect what he loved. He just misunderstood what protection required. If I have only a few years left, and at 79 that is realistic, I don't want to spend them calculating anything. I want to sit when someone asks me to sit. I want to listen when someone speaks. I want to say yes more quickly. There is a kind of acceptance that comes with age. Not peace exactly, just clarity. I cannot rewrite 40 years. I can only tell you that I spent them building a fortress, and in the process, I often stood outside the very rooms I was trying to secure. That is the truth of my life. I am 79 years old, and I am still learning how to sit still.